Hello and welcome to another one of my films. This one's going to be a bit different because I'm going to be in it for a change. This is then Trentabank Reservoir, just to give you a backstory. So I came here on March the 23rd to do a film. Now, it's fair to say that I've noticed over time that people tend not to so much watch my films as almost kind of come along with me. But an idea was sort of started in my head about maybe being able to help people that I knew, particularly at my work, because things were all in the air. So I decided to come up here that Monday night to do a film. So sorry if that doesn't register, but basically we are going to head part way towards Shutlands Low. Long story short though, I had a couple of car crashes when I was younger. One in particular I'm still suffering from, and was told by the age of 30 I wasn't actually going to be able to walk unaided again. So I'm still going, but I do find it difficult at times. But I'm just sort of going to take you back the way that I did do that film on March the 23rd, because I think it'll sort of make sense of everything. I started these films in 2013, really because for a couple of members of my family who weren't lucky enough to be able to come and go where I was. So it also explains one of the reasons why actually that I'm never in the films, because it's like, well, they know what I look like. And over time, I guess, sort of a style developed. And it was almost more like telling the story, really, because I wasn't in the film. It sort of became people enjoying coming with me as opposed to watching it. So over time, this sort of style developed, and I became very comfortable with it because I suddenly found it was a way that I was comfortable with talking to people and expressing things. So I think the first thing I've got to do is just explain, I guess, a little back history about myself. So when I was 14, I had a really bad accident. I was playing the guitar. I'll demonstrate. So one hand on the guitar, and I went to reach across for a lamp. It then created a circuit. Good old-fashioned video, I think I was playing along to at the time. So I did that, and I could see that I was electrocuted for something like 15 seconds. I was off school for a week, but something had changed, and it took a long time for me to realise what had happened. But for some reason, I suddenly went from being very quiet, almost a little follower of the crowd, etc., to just being out there. Just like, you know, wanting to join a band and go on the stage. You know, the idea of going on stage to me before was just horrific. Or just being, you know, from to like. So that was quite a big thing that happened to me. And let me explain what happened next. So anyway, after that, it's fair to say that I started to find this need to push things, be it through dares with your friends about, you know, if you climb this, I'll climb that, you know, I'll drive faster. And it all started to become this thing about being out of control. And it wasn't just, by the way, as some people might think, an obvious one, the drink. No, in fact, I was one of the few people who didn't really drink just to forget. It was all about, I just only felt in control when things were really out of control, if you get what I mean. So this did get to the point where things were getting rather difficult, and I decided to go and get some help. So after several years, this whole control thing was just getting worse and worse. And I mean, I was loving it on the stage, but then I was barely even able to get out my car and face people. Things were going very, very strange. And even though it gave me the energy to go to some amazing places like Israel twice and Mexico, it was just getting darker and darker and darker. And also, to be honest, it was starting to affect my job. I just didn't have an energy anymore. And so, I mean, the drinking thing was the thing that, whilst it wasn't excessive in the sense of at your work, it was the days off that things sometimes could go bad. But that was the reason why I actually went to go and try and find some help. But what was amazing was that the lady who ran this particular clinic used to be an ex-nurse at Crewe, and she used to basically help people who actually had traumatic brain injuries after an accident. So within 2 weeks, I'd suddenly gone from being completely unknowing for like nearly 30 years about what had happened to me, to all of a sudden this lady being able to sit there literally with a case study almost of my accident. And basically what happens is when you really do get that close to things, well, frankly dying, the brain sort of opens up this one little last bit of itself, and it kind of throws out all these chemicals. And what these chemicals do is just basically just ease you on your way. You know, they calm you down. And so as a consequence of that, my problem is that basically what happened was I was able to shake myself out of the plug just by literally a matter of centimetres, but that made all the difference. But it was like my bit of brain was still open. So the best way of describing it is it has sort of destroyed the area where you'd normally like think before you speak, for example. So everyone thinks you're brilliant because you always say what everyone else is thinking, but sometimes I can't stop that. But so that being explained to me just suddenly made me start to understand my personality. But then, as I say, things a couple of years ago got a bit darker. So I was sat in my hairdressers and I was speaking to the owner. I've known him for years, and he was talking to me about something that had happened to somebody, and it was all on Facebook for the last week. And he was talking to me as if I knew what was going on and about a particular person. And he suddenly realised after about 2 minutes that I didn't have Facebook. And he was like, oh, sugar. So he could see how distressed I was about hearing about what happened to this particular person, because it was one of the most kindest things. But he just gently sort of just held my head, because I really was kind of shaking quite a bit. I mean, because the thing was, this was someone who, you know, I'd grown up with, and was kind of one of those people that you want to be on their football team, and when you're a kid, you know, if they spoke to you for 10 seconds, you know, on your own, you buzzed off it. You know what I'm saying? And it was someone that a lot of us just had so much time for, and they just seemed so solid. So for them to take their own lives, just seemingly so out of the blue, I suddenly thought, do you know what, basically, if they've got trouble, I realised that I was struggling quite a bit. My work wasn't going too well, etc. I wasn't even enjoying playing live. I've forgotten how to have fun. So that's when I decided to go and get some help. Now, I have to be honest that I had a bit of counselling in the past. The idea of a mental health talk, conversation, meeting, whatever you want to call it, was mentioned, but I just wasn't in the room for it. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I noticed, that I just forgot how to enjoy myself. And I'm not being flippant there. I really was kind of dead. In fact, the clinic that helped explain my brain injury, she said when I first walked in, she just said there was nothing behind your eyes. So I'm sorry it had to be a circumstance such as what happened for me to sort of step forward and say, yeah, I need some help. But it's almost in a way of sort of making sure that what happened to that person wasn't a complete waste, that something good could come out of it. Now, I was lucky that I could go through my work for help, but I think right now, and I'll talk about this more at the end of the film, but I cannot tell you how many people are talking about mental health issues right now, because let's be honest, that a worldwide pandemic with no cure is a horrific thing, and I think for the first time a lot of people are feeling mental health issues that perhaps otherwise didn't. So, as I say, this is why I'm talking right now, because I think the world is a very kind place about this at the moment. But anyway, so I was, within a week, I was very lucky. I was put in touch with this particular lady, but I've got to be honest, for the first 2 sessions I made my excuses and didn't attend, because this whole concept was just too much to me. Was it owning up to the fact you weren't right, there was something wrong with you? Well, yeah, but you know, I felt guilty and embarrassed. I shouldn't. So third time I went in, I had a proper conversation with her, and she said, right, well, you've got PTSD. What's that? Post-traumatic stress disorder? And honestly, I went, I've not served in Afghanistan or something. I'm not even alive. I was like, what? And she was just so good. Within about 2 minutes, she said, well, basically, Paul, weren't you dying and nearly out of control? Yes, I was. And weren't you fearful of your life and not in control? Yes, I was. Well, that's how you get post-traumatic stress disorder. So, honestly, I felt about 8 feet tall and certainly 20 stone lighter, because when you talk to someone, you might be amazed how quickly someone who knows what they're on about can actually do to completely turn your life around. And that certainly happened for me. So, what this therapist also did for me was she started to get me back into my films again and get me interested in it, and you know, even going out, say, in winter and stuff like that, because I didn't used to do that before. But she made me realise they had a value. And back to the point as to why I was up here on what turned out to be the lockdown night, it was actually that I've realised that I can actually do something to help because of the way maybe how I take these films, basically the way how I've ended up, okay? You know, I'm not a label, I'm a person, I'm me. But these circumstances have actually allowed me to do something good, because I tell you what, I did these little local lockdown walks and I was hoping they were for my colleagues, but they've had about 3,000 hits. And more to the point, I've literally bumped into people actually doing them. And also, when I went back to work, I think 5% of people said, oh yeah, we've done the walks. And then about the other 95% said, thank you ever so much for helping us through this. And so this is really why I'm doing this tonight. It's just, I don't feel I should explain, but as I say, there's a great kindness going on at the moment in these very difficult times. So I've sort of been able to be lucky enough to be able to actually sort of bring all this together and do something that, you know what, I'm proud of, and I'm proud of being me. So, all in all, I tell you what, right now I feel just so much better. As I say, it's just a time I feel that if you do have any issues or anything like that, and let's be honest, particular men, please talk, because as I say, you will find a lot of people who really do understand where you're coming from. So, thank you very much for coming with me to, well, me. And by the way, the flies are everywhere, good grief. But tell you what I'm going to get back to doing, and that's taking you to some great places. So thank you ever so much for listening, and I'll just carry on, definitely with a much lighter heart. Left or right? Tell you what,